Don't stop.
Hi, welcome back to the Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay podcast. And this is Everything. This show is where we talk about life, identity, the things that move us the most, the things that inspire us, the things that make us absolutely want to flip a table, just like Teresa Giudice did in The Real Housewives of New Jersey. And today, we are table flipping. I want to give a disclaimer up front. If you are, in fact, a Trump-loving MAGA person, which I doubt it if you're listening to my show, but if you are, you may want to just go ahead and just hit pause and close this app out right now or close this video out and not watch it. Because I'm going to go places that I have not gone before. I tried to keep this podcast neutral from politics, but over the last 6 months, I have been reading news on my other podcast, Listen Up Girl, and all of the news I read is so disturbing, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. I'm having harder times finding positive stories. My stories are all now going around the trans rights that are being taken away from our transgender community. So we are absolutely flipping this table today, and I want to do something a little different. There's no guest, there's no interview, just me and a microphone and a very long list of facts that I think every single person listening to the show needs to hear. Because I believe an informed community is a powerful community. And I believe silence is complicity. And I'm not built for silence. So we're going to spend the next 25 minutes or so going through the record. The reported, verified record of what the orange convicted felon has done to this country since January 20th, 2025. And I want to be crystal clear before we start. This is not a rant. This is not an opinion. Everything I'm about to tell you has all been reported by news organizations, documented in congressional records, tracked by nonpartisan watchdogs, and in many cases confirmed by his own words. So grab something to drink because we're going in. So let's start with the promises and the receipts. Before we get into specific topics, let's start with the promises because he made so many of them, like unbelievable amount of promises. He promised lower prices at day one. His exact words on the campaign trail, lower costs day one. He promised to cut energy prices in half within 12 months. He promised gasoline below $2 a gallon. He promised no new wars. He promised to make America rich. He promised Doge savings delivered back to the people as dividend checks. He promised jobs coming roaring back. He promised and promised and promised. So let's check those receipts. Prices are higher. American families paid an estimated $2,120 more in 2025 because of the inflation under his watch. The bottom 25% of households, the people who can least afford it, paid roughly $950 more. That is over 5% of their entire estimated income, just to get the lights on and the food on the table. Natural gas bills are up. Electricity bills are up. The average American family paid $124 more in utility bills in just the first 9 months of 2025 compared to the year before. And natural gas prices in 2026 are projected to be 16% higher than 2025. And gas prices, remember when he promised us $2 a gallon? 1 year in, the national average was $2.82. Not even close. And then he started the Iran war, and gas prices surged even 50% more. Congressional Republicans were so desperate to spend this, they tried to claim prices had never been this bad. House Majority Leader Stephen Scalise went on CNBC and said people were paying nearly $6 a gallon 2 years ago. The conservative host at CNBC fact-checked him on air, and he made it up. But here's the real question I keep asking, and I need you to sit with this. How are American families surviving? Seriously, like how are they surviving? Imagine having a whole family, and this could be you, having a family of children that are, some are in college, some are in high school, some are younger, you have daycare schools possibly to pay for. How is a family of four making $60,000 or $70,000 a year, surviving when groceries cost more, gas costs more, utilities cost more, and healthcare cost more? How is a single parent doing it? How is a senior living on fixed income doing it? How is a young couple trying to save for their first home doing it while paying more for everything every single month because the tariff chaos and the energy policy failures that benefited the billionaires at the top and left everyone else holding the bill. These aren't abstract numbers. These are real people, real families, and real struggle. So, no wars. In January of 2026, U.S. forces launched a military operation in Venezuela without congressional authorization. In February of 2026, the United States entered an active war with Iran, striking nuclear facilities, and gas prices surged 50%. Their promises were broken, every single one that mattered. So, who is this man really? So, let's talk about that. Not as a politician, not as a person, because I think the daily avalanche of chaos has made us forget the foundational disqualifications, the real things that should have ended before it started. This is the President of the United States. This is the man who in 2005 was caught on tape on Access Hollywood bus saying, and I'm quoting directly, "I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. Just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything you want. Grab them by the pussy." That tape is real. It was authenticated by NBC. It was admitted as evidence in court proceedings. He called it locker room talk. Then years later at the campaign rallies, he joked about it. He winked at it. He referenced SpaceX rocket arms as something you grab them like you'd grab your beautiful baby. And then he said in the old days, he would have said something different and the crowds laughed along. This is the president we're talking about. And that tape wasn't even the end of it. In May of 2023, a Manhattan jury found the orange convicted felon liable for sexually abusing writer E. Jean Carroll, a longtime magazine columnist who testified that he had assaulted her in Bergdorf Goodman dressing room in 1996. He claimed he'd never met her. He called her not his type. He called her a complete con job. The jury awarded her $5 million in damages. The appeals court upheld it. The second jury in January 24 ordered Trump to pay Carroll an additional $83.3 million, $18.3 million in comp damages for her destroyed reputation and emotional harm, and $65 million in punitive damages to, in the words of her attorney, make him stop. Over $88 million to one woman for sexual abuse and defaming her when she came forward. And then in May of 2024, a New York jury found him guilty on all 34 criminal counts of falsifying business records, making him the first former president of the United States to be convicted of felony crimes. 34 felony crimes related to hush money payments made up to cover an affair with him and film actress Stormy Daniels. Payments made to him to protect his 2016 campaign. He was also impeached, let's not forget that, twice. First time for abusing his power with Ukraine, the second time for inciting the mob that stormed the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021. Grab him by the pussy, found liable for sexually abusing a woman in a department store, paid hush money to a porn star and falsified the records, incited an insurrection, convicted on 34 felony counts. This is the man who is making decisions about who and who isn't worthy of dignity in America. This is the man signing executive orders about trans people in bathrooms. This is the man deciding which history gets told and which gets erased. This is the man currently in the White House calling himself the defender of freedom. The audacity of it should take your breath away. And we'll be right back. Okay, now back to the show. Then we have the war on trans people, and the numbers really do not lie. So let's talk about the LGBTQ plus community, and specifically, let's talk about the legislative assault on transgender Americans. Because the scale of what is being done and to whom it is, I don't think most people have truly reckoned with it. First, let me give you a number. Transgender Americans make up less than 1% of the United States population. Less than 1%. Approximately 1.6 million people in a country of 340 million people. Less than 1%. And yet, on January 20th, 2025, day one of the orange convicted felons signed multiple executive orders targeting trans people. He banned trans people from serving in the military. He ordered federal agencies to recognize only two sexes. He ordered the Bureau of Prisons to house people according to their sex at birth, meaning trans women who had transitioned, who had lived as women, who were safely housed in women's facilities would be forcibly moved to a men's prison. Let me make sure you heard that. A transgender woman who is fully transitioned, who may have had surgery, who has lived as a woman for years, who is documented as a woman, would be sent to a men's prison because of the sex she was assigned at birth. Regardless of how long ago she transitioned, regardless of what her body looks like, regardless of the documented danger, about 2,000 people in federal prisons identify as transgender. And the order mandated that no federal funds be spent on any medical treatment for the purpose of gender transformation for inmates. No hormones, nothing, just removed. Overnight, it's gone. Transgender women sent to men's prisons where studies document that they face huge, higher rates of sexual assault and violence. 14 trans women filed a class action lawsuit. A federal judge repeatedly blocked the policy, and the administration kept fighting to implement it anyway. Now, here's the broader picture, because this wasn't just the federal government. 598 bills restricting the rights of queer people were proposed in the state legislatures across the United States in 2025 alone, with 67 becoming law in 1 year. That's only in 2025, in 1 year. In 2026, 796 bills are currently under consideration that would negatively impact trans and gender non-conforming people. The number is anticipated to grow. 2025 was the sixth consecutive record-breaking year for the total number of anti-trans bills considered. 6 years in a row, getting worse every year. These bills target people in bathrooms, in schools, in sports, in healthcare, in prison, and shelters. They ban trans kids from getting care. They allow parents who support their trans child to be charged with child abuse. They allow people who regret transitioning to sue their doctors. They ban LGBTQ flags from government buildings. Montana alone passed 6 anti-LGBTQ bills in 2025. The DOJ released an internal memo describing being transgender as, and I need you to hear this, a sociological disease from the Department of Justice of the United States. In 2025, I want you to think about the legislative bandwidth, the congressional hours, the executive orders, the court battles, the government resources being deployed against less than 1% of the population, against people who are not hurting anyone, against people who are simply trying to live their authentic life. While gas prices surge, while families struggle to pay bills, while Doge money disappears and the tariff money is unaccounted for, because fear is a fundraising tool, because hatred is a mobilization strategy, because if you can make people afraid of trans people in the bathroom, they stop asking where the money went. That's what this is. That's what it always has been about. Then we go to ICE, terror in the streets. So let's talk about this ICE department. In 2025, the Trump administration increased what they call community arrest. ICE agents going into neighborhoods, workplaces, farms, university campus, private homes by more than 11 times what the previous administration had done. 11 times. ICE personnel are more than doubled. They are targeting 3,000 arrests per day. Over 220,000 people were arrested in 2025, including more than 75,000 people with no criminal record in the first 9 months alone. No criminal record, just living their lives. Neighborhoods were ghost town quiet because people were terrified to take their kids to school. New research has confirmed that ICE raids disrupted local economies and may have hurt U.S.-born workers too. And then people started getting killed. On January 7th, 2026, an ICE agent killed an American citizen. By mid-January, operations have resulted in at least 2 fatal shootings of civilians by federal agents. 60% of Americans believe ICE uses excessive force, and the administration's response? To argue in court for absolute immunity for ICE officers. No accountability, no oversight, just unchecked power. Minnesota erupted in protest. Cities across the country shut in a national strike on January 30th. And through it all, he called it the largest domestic deportation operation in American history, like it was something to be proud of. Over 540,000 people deported, families torn apart, children left without parents, communities hollowed out. Now let's talk about erasing Black history, because I want to talk about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention because it's quiet, institutional, and deeply indigenous. The orange convicted felon has been systematically erasing Black history from the American public life. In March of 2025, he signed the executive order targeting the Smithsonian Institution, specifically the National Museum of African American History and Culture, declaring it had been influenced by a diverse, race-centered ideology and empowering J.D. Vance to review every program and remove what the president called improper ideology. Then, in August of 2025, he went on Truth Social and wrote, and these are the actual words, "The Smithsonian is out of control, where everything is discussed as how horrible our country is and how bad slavery was." He complained that the Smithsonian talks about how bad the slavery was. The Interior Department ordered federal agencies to remove exhibits about slavery and racial injustice from national parks by September of 25 deadline. At Philadelphia's Independence National Historical Park, steps from Independence Hall, National Park Service workers abruptly removed exhibits documenting the 9 enslaved people that George Washington held while he was president of the United States. Workers were heard saying, "I'm just following orders. I'm just following orders to remove the truth about slavery" from a park next to Independence Hall. A judge blocked the removal, but the fact that it happened at all should shake every one of us to the core. He also killed free admission on the MLK Day and Juneteenth. He stripped funding. He attacked school curricula. He signed in an order called, and I am not making this up, "Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History" by removing the truth. And on top of all this, no attacks on the Obama family have been relentless. He spent years spreading the birther lie, claiming that Barack Obama wasn't born in this country, designed to delegitimize the first Black president. And in recent years, he has amplified a deeply vile transphobic conspiracy theory about Michelle Obama, suggesting she is a man. A Harvard law graduate, a woman who spent 8 years with grace and dignity in the White House. He did not dismiss the rumor, he spread it to his millions of followers. The pattern of targeting Black women is long. He went after Kamala Harris. He went after Ketanji Brown Jackson. He went after Stacey Abrams. He called Black women nasty. He suggested they only got there through their affirmative action. And he once stood in front of Black voters and said, "What do you have to lose?" Well, we found out, didn't we? Now let's talk about the sleeper, who he is. So I need a moment here because this one brings me genuine, almost physical joy. You remember Sleepy Joe? Of course you do, because for years, the orange convicted felon mocking Joe Biden's energy in his signature insult. He said Biden falls asleep at every single event. He mocked him relentlessly. He built into his brand. He was sleeping while you were working. He said at a rally, he was sleeping while you were trying to do a great job. And then February 19th, 2026, the orange convicted felon hosts his Board of Peace meeting, and on camera, he falls asleep. He is literally caught nodding off at his own peace conference. And then hours later, that same day, he goes on Truth Social to attack Biden for being sleepy. He posted an AI-generated image on May of 2026 showing Biden asleep in the Oval Office in pajamas while Barack Obama was wheeling in a box. A highly accurate description of the Sleepy Joe Biden administration. That's how he captioned it. He posted that while the video of himself falling asleep was actively circulating on social media. This is the man who claimed he only sleeps 4 hours a night. The man whose supporters called a force of pure energy, asleep at his own press event while attacking someone else for sleeping. I don't know how any of us could ever let this go, and we never should. So now let's talk about where is the Doge money. Let's talk about it because the Department of Government Efficiency was run by Elon Musk. You know, he's promised $1 trillion in savings. He even floated giving 20% of it back to American people as dividend checks, 20%. Personal checks to tax-paying households. Did you get a check? Because I did not get a check. More than 260,000 workers left federal service in 2025 through firings, forced resignations, early retirement, and hiring freeze. Real people, Veterans Affairs employees, CDC scientists, NIH researchers, the entire USAID operation, CDC teams that monitor maternal mortality, people at the U.S. Institute of Peace, all gone. And the Government Accountability Office, the nonpartisan congressional watchdog that literally exists to track this stuff, said it cannot pinpoint how much was actually saved or lost by the Doge activities. They don't know because nobody knows. What we do know is that by October 2025, the federal government has spent $500 billion more than it brought in after all the cuts, because more than 90% of the federal spending goes to Social Security, Medicare, defense, and interest on the debt. Doge didn't touch those. And then one big, beautiful bill. That is the real name for the actual legislation. Its projected increase the federal deficit by at least $3 trillion over the next decade. $3 trillion added. And after a year of firing 260,000 people, after gutting life-saving research programs, after dismantling consumer protections, after eliminating services that millions of Americans relied on, the $1 trillion savings never materialized. The dividend checks never ever sent. The deficit continues to grow. The debt is growing and growing and growing. But the 260,000 people who lost their jobs, that happened. Where did the money go? Where are the savings? I'm asking for a friend. The friend is the American people. And we'll be right back. Okay, and now back to the show. Next, where's the tariff money? He promised tariffs would make America rich. He said the foreign countries would pay. He said jobs and factories would come roaring back. The Trump tariffs are the largest U.S. tax increase as a percentage to the GDP since 1993. They amount to an average increase of $1,500 per household in 2026. Foreign countries didn't pay it. You paid it. Every time you went to the store, every time you bought something, monthly job growth in 2025 averaged just 49,000 jobs compared to 168,000 jobs per month in 2024. The economy he inherited from Joe Biden was the most measures extraordinarily strong. He walked into a blooming economy and through deliberate policy choices began to destabilize it. And then in February of 2026, the Supreme Court struck down most of the tariffs, ruling he didn't have the legal authority to impose them. His response, he attacked the Supreme Court justices he appointed, called them disappointing, said they should be ashamed. His own justices. He told us the tariff money was going to be paying down the debt and would fill the treasury. So where is it? Who is auditing this? Prices went up, jobs went down, the deficit grew, and no one has an answer. Even Elon Musk, his guy, said publicly that the tariffs would cause a recession. His own guy turned on him. Even Ted Cruz warned that a political bloodbath if the tariffs stayed. But I want to go back to those families, the ones paying $1,500 more this year, the single parent trying to fill up a gas tank, the senior cutting their grocery list in half, the young family trying to buy their home in a housing market that hasn't gotten cheaper. Those aren't economic stats, those are people, real people. And the man who promised to lower those costs has made everything more expensive. Now the family business of war. While American soldiers were at war, the president's sons were cashing in on it. Don Jr. and Eric Trump are investors in a drone company called Powerus. targeting Pentagon defense contracts worth over $1.1 billion. Their company went public through a reverse merger with a Florida golf course company, because of course it did. Their company signed its first weapons procurement contract, the U.S. military, for a drone interceptor purpose-built for the Middle East to defend against the Iranian attack drones. So let that land for a second. They sold drones to fight the war their father started, and they made money doing it. Eric also invested in an Israeli drone maker called Extend, which had already won a multi-million-dollar Pentagon deal. A robotics company with Eric Trump as chief strategy advisor landed a $24 million Pentagon deal in 2026 of April. Congressional Democrats formally asked the Pentagon's Inspector General to investigate whether these contracts were influenced by the conflicts of interest. Don Jr. and Eric say there are no ethical breach because they're private citizens. But the president sets the military agenda. He decided to go to war with Iran. He created the Drone Dominance Initiative. He directed $1.1 billion, with a B, dollars in Pentagon spending toward American drone manufacturers. And his son's companies got the contracts. This is wartime profiteering happening in the open, in the daylight, on the NASDAQ. And then there's Jared Kushner, the orange convicted felon's son-in-law, appointed as the administration of special peace envoy in February of 2026. Out there negotiating with Saudi Arabia, with Iran, with the region's most powerful governments on behalf of the United States. And at the same time, simultaneously, he was raising money for his private equity firm, Affinity Partners, from those same governments. Affinity's assets soared to $6.2 billion at the end of 2025. About a 99% of those assets belong to non-U.S. investors, primarily Gulf countries' wealth funds. The firm collected an estimated $129 million in fees from the Saudi Arabia's government, run investment arm between 2021 and 2025. And now he is seeking an additional $5 billion in new investments from the same government he has sponsored to begin negotiating with on behalf of the American people. Senior Democratic lawmakers wrote that Kushner was simultaneously being paid millions of dollars by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and other Gulf monarchies while leading diplomatic negotiations with Iran and Russia, calling the arrangement not only corrupt, but endangering the lives of Americans. Senator Wyden referred Kushner to the Department of Justice for possible violations of Foreign Agents Registration Act. An investigation was launched and nothing happened. The peace envoy is still fundraising from the government he's negotiating with. His son's selling drones to fight the war, and we are supposed to call this leadership. Now let's go to Venezuela, a war without authorization and oil without accountability. So on January 3rd of 2026, the United States military launched a large-scale attack on Venezuela. Explosions in the capital, strikes on airports and military bases, U.S. forces captured the president of Venezuela. The military operation conducted without congressional authorization. Not a vote, not a debate. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the congressional approval wasn't necessary because it was technically an invasion. We bombed a country, captured its president without a vote. Trump said at a press conference, in his own words, we're going to have our very large United States oil companies go in, spend billions of dollars, fix badly broken oil infrastructures. Let's start making money for the country. He said it out loud. We went for the oil. Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves in the world. So here's my question. Where's the money? The Council of Foreign Relations published a deep investigation and found that the Trump administration has provided almost no information on how the Venezuela oil revenue is being collected, managed, or distributed. The American and Venezuelan people remain completely in the dark about billions of dollars of Venezuelan oil revenue. Democrats launched an investigation where their oil companies were coordinating with the administration before the operation. The investigation went nowhere. We started a war, we captured a president, we took control of oil, and no one can tell you where that money went. Now we go to Iran, the ultimate flip-flop. So let me tell you the Iran story, because it is extraordinary. 2018, the orange convicted felon pulls the United States out of the Obama-Iran nuclear deal. He calls it the worst deal I've ever seen. He says it gave Iran a windfall of cash. He imposed sanctions, he mocked it for years and called it a disaster. Turn to June of 2025, the US and Israel struck Iran's nuclear facilities. We went to war. And then he signed a memorandum understanding with Iran. A deal, his deal. What's in it? The United States is lifting its naval blockade. We are committing to lift sanctions. We are unfreezing Iranian assets. We are allowing Iran to sell oil again. We are committing to a plan for $300 billion for the reconstruction and economic development of Iran. $300 billion to rebuild the country we just bombed. He also said Iran should have the right to enrich uranium, receive access to billions in frozen funds, and be allowed to develop ballistic missiles, all of which he had red lines for his own administration just months earlier. His former UN ambassador, Nikki Haley, said, "It's a huge mistake to pay to rebuild the threat we just destroyed." He called the Obama deal a disaster for giving sanctions, relief, and cash. He now has an Iran deal that gives Iran $300 billion, lifts all sanctions, and allows uranium enrichment. He told us no new wars. He started two. He told us Iran never get nuclear deal from him. Here is the deal. And just to close the loop, he went on the Truth Social to respond to critics of the deal and wrote, "These fools are either jealous, bad people, or stupid." Jealous, bad people, or stupid, that is what he said about the people who asking legitimate questions about the government that contradicts everything he claimed to stand for. Now let's go to the famous Epstein question. So I want to ask you a question, not state a fact. Ask a question because I think we deserve to say it out loud. During his 2024 campaign, the orange convicted felon promised to release the Epstein files. Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted child sex trafficker, the man who ran a network exploiting minors, the man who died in federal custody under circumstances that have never been fully explained. The Trump promised full transparency. Release the files. Let the American people see. His DOJ missed its legal deadline to release the complete files. When the files were released, they were incomplete, and now documents obtained through reporting revealed the files specifically related to the accusations about Trump had been removed and withheld by his own Justice Department. His own Justice Department withheld the files that mentioned his name. Now, what do we know from the files that were released? A newly unearthed document of the DOJ's release suggests Trump was fully aware of the scope of crimes of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were committing in Palm Beach. According to the reporting, Trump himself called a local police station and told them Epstein and Maxwell were evil. He knew, he told the police, and maintained the friendship for years. A newly released email from the Justice Department's Epstein files reveals that Epstein claimed to be in the Palm Beach area with, and I'm quoting from the email, all the Trump boys on Christmas Day 2016, 1 month after Trump won the president election. With all the Trump boys, Christmas 2016. House Democrats released thousands of Epstein emails that they allege show Trump knew of Epstein's sex trafficking. And many of these emails, Epstein is discussing Trump in the days leading up to his inauguration. Trump called the release a political trap and dismissed the entire thing as a hoax. Now, here is my question. We started with the war in Iran. We invaded Venezuela. We had a wall-to-wall chaos after crisis, crisis after crisis, news cycle after news cycle. And every time the Epstein files come up, every time the questions about who he knew and what he knew get close to the surface, something else explodes into the news. I'm not telling you what to conclude. I'm asking you, is that by design? Because the man promised us the files. His DOJ is blocking the files. The files were released, mentioned him. The emails mentioned him. The police report mentions him. And he is calling anyone ask questions about a fraud and a hoax. At the start of 2026, many people believe he is now one of the powerful few keeping the public in the dark about Epstein. I'm just asking the question and you decide what you believe. If you don't believe that he's in the Epstein files, you need to go seek therapy. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Okay, and now back to the show. Then let's go to Israel and Gaza. So, what's really happening? He wants a Nobel Peace Prize. Let's start with that. He said this publicly. He wants to be great Middle East peacemaker. Since taking office, the Trump administration approved nearly $12 billion in weapons sales to Israel, including missiles, bombs, and armored personnel carriers. That figure comes from the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio himself. More than 66,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since October 7th, 2023. An investigation drawing on a classified Israeli military intelligence database found 83% of those killed were civilians. The Israeli military did not dispute the existence of the database. The Orange Convicted Felons Administration brokered a ceasefire in October 2025. He called it a triumph. And yet, since the ceasefire was signed, Israel military operations have killed over 1,000 more Palestinians. After the ceasefire, while the Board of Peace existed, UNICEF reported that Israel attacks killed more than 100 children in just the first few months after the ceasefire agreement. He sends $12 billion in weapons. He calls it peace. He creates a Board of Peace, and bombs keep falling. That's what's happening. Now let's talk about silencing the press. PBS and NPR, we'll start there. While we're talking about what's destroying, let's talk about PBS and NPR, because on May 1st, 2025, the Orange Convicted Felons signed the executive order titling End Taxpayer Subsidization on Biased Media, instructing the federal agencies to terminate funding to the corporations for public broadcasting, NPR and PBS, calling their journalism woke propaganda and radical and biased. PBS chief Paula Kerger called the order blatantly unlawful. Congressional members called it a retaliation. First Amendment scholars called it textbook censorship, because it was. The Republican-led Congress approved Trump's plan to claw back $1.1 billion in public broadcasting fund. And in January 2026, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which existed for 58 years and funneled federal dollars to public radio and television stations across the country, shut down. 58 years, it's gone. The Trump executive order immediately cut millions of dollars in education funding to PBS, forcing PBS Kids, the children's programming division, to lay off 1/3 of its staff. 1/3 of people, and people who make programming for children. A federal judge eventually ruled the executive order was unconstitutional, calling it a textbook viewpoint discrimination and a First Amendment violation. But considerable damage had already been done. Think about what PBS and NPR represent. In rural communities across the country, public broadcasting is often the only non-commercial news source. It's where people get emergency alerts. It's where children watch educational programming that helps them get ready for school. It's where Sesame Street lives. It's where documentary journalism and investigation reports and arts are coverage outside the influence of advertisers and political owners. He called it propaganda because it wouldn't cover him the way he wanted. This is what authoritarians do. They don't come for the press all at once. They defund it. They delegitimize it. They call it fake. They call it bias. And then they shut it down. And they replace it with the silence with their own voice. The free press is not optional. It's infrastructure. And he is dismantling it. Now let's talk about nobody came to his party. And I want to end with this because I genuinely could not make it up. The Orange Convicted Felon decided he would be the one to lead America's 250th birthday celebration. The Great American State Fair on the National Mall. Freedom 250. His vision, his legacy. He wanted performers. He wanted a concert. He wanted it to be a spectacular event. And the artist said no. Young MC said, and I'm reading this directly, I don't fuck with Trump and I don't give a fuck about Trump. I know the type of fucking man he creates. He would be the one to lead America's 250th birthday celebration. The Great American State Fair on the National Mall. Freedom 250. His vision, his legacy. He wanted performers. He wanted a concert. He wanted it to be a spectacular event. And the artist said no. Young MC said, and I'm reading this directly, I don't fuck with Trump and I don't give a fuck about Trump. I know the type of fucking man he creates. No, that's not what he said. Sorry. Young MC said this, and I'm reading this directly. I don't fuck with Trump and I don't give a fuck about Trump. His agent said he didn't say anything about Trump when booking his show. When he found out it was a Trump event, he was gone. Martha McBride said that she was presented with the opportunity to perform at a nonpartisan event, but that turned out to be misleading. The Commodores, out. Morris Day and the Time, out. CNC Music Factory, out. Bret Michaels, out. Milli Vanilli, there's only one member left, said he was shocked to hear that their name was even listed at all. Lin-Manuel Miranda pulled Hamilton from the Kennedy Center because the orange convicted felon declared himself the chairman of the Kennedy Center. Miranda said, "This is not the Kennedy Center as we know it. We are not going to be part of it while it is the Trump Kennedy Center." And who showed up? Who actually said yes? Vanilla Ice. For the 250th birthday of the United States of America, a country that produced Frank Sinatra, Whitney Houston, Beyonce, Bruce Springsteen, Billie Eilish, Madonna, Taylor Swift, Lin-Manuel Miranda, we have Vanilla Ice. The orange convicted felon who called himself the visionary behind the entire celebration mocked deporting artists on Truth Social and announced he'd host a rally instead. He turned the 250th anniversary of the United States of America into a rally that nobody wanted to perform at. This is both deeply funny and deeply revealing. And let's not forget the reflection pool that he just spent $10 million on that turned green days later. And now the beautiful blue paint that is on the bottom of that reflection pool for this 250th celebration is now peeling off. $10 million. Do you know what $10 million could have done to help this country? Let's forget about all the others, hundreds of billions of dollars that we've wasted, but even that could have helped so many people. So this is where it is, all in one place. This is the president who said, "Grab him by the pussy" on tape and laughed at it years later. Found liable for sexually abusing E. Jean Carroll and ordered to pay her $88 million. Convicted on 34 felony counts, impeached twice, and sitting in the White House anyway. This is the president who promised to release the Epstein files and whose DOJ is hiding the files that mention him, who was with the Trump boys at Christmas with Epstein in 2016, who told the police he knew Epstein was evil and who stayed friends with him. This is the president who declared war on less than 1% of the population, who is sending trans women who have fully transitioned into men's prisons, where they face catastrophic rates of violence, who signed 796 anti-trans bills into consideration in 2026 alone, who told the DOJ to call being a transgender a psychological disease. This is the president whose ICE agents killed an American citizen and fired on civilians while deporting 540,000 people, including 75,000 with zero criminal record, whose family is selling drones to fight the wars he started, whose son-in-law is raising $6.2 billion from Saudi Arabia by negotiating it for us, who cannot account for the Doge savings, the tariff revenue, or Venezuelan oil money. This is the president who erased Black history from our own museums, who spread lies about Michelle Obama, who fell asleep at his own meeting and then called Biden Sleepy Joe the same afternoon, who bombed Iran and agreed to pay $300 billion to rebuild it, who supported Israel with $12 billion in weapons and called it peace, while 1,000 Palestinians died after the ceasefire, who shut down PBS and NPR, 58 years of public broadcasting because they wouldn't cover him in the way he wanted, and who threw a 250th anniversary party of the United States of America, and the only person who showed up was Vanilla Ice. This is the record of it all. And let's not forget the new Air Force One that was given to him by Qatar. They had to spend another $300 million on this to make it a secure and upgrade this plane. And now we find out that it is not staying with the next president that comes into office. He's taking it with him, that plane that was given to the country, supposedly, We invested $300 million of taxpayer money to upgrade this plane, and he's taking it with him and saying it's for the Trump Presidential Library. All of it is documented, reported, confirmed, and this all happened in under 2 years. We deserve better, and we have always deserved better, and I believe we're going to get it, but only if we stay awake, stay informed, and we stay loud. If this episode moved you, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Send it to someone who keeps saying things aren't that bad. I do not like bringing these type of programs. I like bringing you interviews of people that are inspiring. I like bringing you interviews of people that I think are interesting. But this has been building for so long. I feel like I had to get all this off my chest. Not just for me, just so it's all out there, because you hear this news coming to you a little bit here, a little bit there. It comes and then it goes away. They throw something else out there. An Iran war gets rid of the Epstein files. We're helping Israel negotiate peace, and then we don't hear about the Epstein files. Doge went away. Where did all those billions of dollars go? It's all a bunch of distraction. Again, I'm bringing this to you just so you can see it all up front. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more. I could have gone on for hours of all the stuff that's happened with this president. Leave a review for this podcast and for this episode. It genuinely helps more people find the show. Follow me on social media. I'm The Real Zachary on Instagram. Follow me on YouTube. Thanks for spending the time with me. Thank you for being part of this community. Stay gay, stay lesbian, stay trans, stay bi, stay an ally, stay queer. I want you to stay fierce and stay fighting. And I want you to keep coming back to the show. I'm not going to do shows like this often where I'm ranting about what's happening, but this is just something that bothered me, and I really needed to put it all out there, get it off my chest, and hopefully help this community understand where we're at. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll be back tomorrow with an episode with an amazing interview that's inspiring and more uplifting and not all this political bullshit. Thanks for staying with me.